Hey guys, how's it going? Collective Dismal here. I just got off work. It's currently almost 2 a.m. A very easy night at work, very uneventful, very low stress. I pretty much got to just sit in a chair for the last 4 hours of my shift. And yeah, it was great. I like those kind of nights. I'm just having a coffee right now and I gotta go inside and get straight to bed because I have a big day tomorrow. Tomorrow, I'm going to be doing something that I never thought I would ever in my life do. And it's really a testament to, the unpredictability of what the future has in store for us. Never say never. Because I said I would never get married, and tomorrow I'm going to walk down the aisle, figuratively speaking. And I really want to ask that you listen to this whole video because I'm going to go through a lot of very deeply personal things in this video. It's not going to be an easy one to make. I think this may be one of the harder, if not the hardest video that I've had to record. And you'll know why that is by the end. And from there, I might step away. I've said this before, and again, I'm never gonna, I'm never too far away, but I might be no longer functioning in this capacity. Because there's a huge tax and a huge burden that's kind of placed on me when I do these. So I'm going to take you through how my day went yesterday. Some things that happened in the Dismal household. And, I was going to come on and strike while the iron was hot. I was going to make a video while I was still all fueled up with rage and animosity, and I decided against that. Instead, I went and had a conversation with my dear friend Sigma Trialectic, and I'm glad that I did, and I slept on it. And so I'm still going to present all of the same ideas, recollections, stories, whatever, that I was going to in that video, but my mood is very much different. I'm much calmer. I'm much more collected, having slept on it and saved it for today. So, I had been getting behind on my sleep a little bit, which is typically the case for me. I slept, I think, 4 hours one night and 5 the next, and I was working, going from nights to mornings to nights to mornings, having these like alternating shifts with my work schedule. And I laid down for a little nap at around 6 p.m. And I figured I would get up in about 2 hours. I had an alarm set for 8 or 8:30, something like that. And I slept through those alarms. I canceled them and continued sleeping. And I slept and slept and slept. And I didn't wake up until about 7 or 8 a.m. the next day. It's well over a 12-hour slumber. And I felt fantastic when I awoke. I felt amazing, like I had been reborn, like I had been revitalized spiritually, everything, physically. And it was also an eating day. I talked last video about alternate day fasting and how I've been doing ADF and how joyous it is when you wake up in the morning and it's a day where you're allowed to eat. I can't stress that enough to you guys. If you didn't watch that video, I'll give you the TLDR. But when you only eat every second day, it's so nice. Like, I didn't eat it all today, and I'm gonna go to bed empty, and then in the mornings, in the morning when I wake up, I can pretty much do what I wilt. I can eat as many eggs and bacon and whatever. So I slept 15 hours, 14 whatever hours, and I woke up and it was an eating day, and I just felt so good about everything. And I went to the freezer in the basement, and this freezer was jam packed with frozen meat, just full of meat, right? Almost nothing else. Meat that I bought, right? I'm the breadwinner. I'm pretty much, my father works here and there. My mother's a retiree, but I'm the main kind of earner in the household, and I paid for all of that meat in the fridge, and it was stuffed to the fucking gills, right? So much so that my girlfriend, soon to be wife, even bought this thing that's almost like a lock for the freezer. And it basically keeps the door from like popping open under the pressure like a can of pressurized gas ready to explode or something like that, right? And I wanted some frozen pork belly out because we all know, pork belly is like the staple of my diet. I eat it pretty much every time I eat, I'm eating pork belly. And so I opened this freezer and I peered in and I looked around. I even moved a thing or two. And I couldn't see it. I couldn't see where it was. So I decided that when my girlfriend woke up or whenever she was around, that I would just have her pull it out for me to thaw. And I left it at that and I went on about my day. I went for a coffee. I had a smoke. I came inside. I sat down at my desk. I started reading. And lo and behold, before long, she had awoken and she was in the fridge getting something. And I asked her, it kind of reminded me, oh, okay, she's standing right there. So I asked her, hey, can you, in the nicest tone I could muster, and I said, hey, can you get some pork belly out for me? And she immediately snaps at me. Oh, you're fucking lazy. You ask me to do everything. Why do you ask me to do it? And I said, well, I'll explain why I asked you to do it, and it has nothing to do with laziness. I says, if I were to have done it, I would have basically, what would have happened is that I would have had to one by one remove every single thing from the freezer and place it basically on the floor until I found what I was looking for, and then try to repack the whole freezer, which was basically like a fucking Tetris game. And I know I would have never gotten it all to go back in. I just know it wouldn't. And I would have had to inevitably call you to fix it anyways, right? Because I just wouldn't have been capable. And she didn't buy this for whatever reason. That's a perfectly sound and logical rationale, but she didn't buy it. She said, you're fucking lazy. Whatever. Yeah, okay. Like I believe that, right? Just sassing me. Just treating me like fucking garbage, right? Like a lazy fucking bastard. And I guess too there had been like a piece of feces, like very small. I always clean the toilet because I know, like I'm not a neat freak, but things like that, I don't leave food around. I don't leave dirty cups or dishes. I don't leave any poop or pee around. I clean the shower, stuff like that. So if that happened, it was purely like forgivable. It's not like I keep a fucking, and she starts getting on me about this and that. So I could tell she was just determined to pick a fight no matter what. And I didn't give in. At this point, I had not yet given in. Now, bear with me. The story's going somewhere, guys. I hadn't given in yet to her little fucking rage bait. So she gets it out, whatever. I thanked her. She goes on upstairs. And she goes up to the top floor of the house. And so I come up out of the basement and I'm going up to do something. I'm going up to check something or I forget what it was, but it's not important. So my parents, they say, hey, come into this room here for a minute. Come into the room. So I'm like, okay, what's going on? And so they knew, about our plans to marry and everything. It's been in the works. And my mother and father said, we have a pair of rings and they belonged to your grandmother and your grandfather. And, they're very nice. And God knows my brother is never going to get married in his life. He's never going to have a family. That I do know. I always say expect the unexpected, but that much I'm assured that will never happen. And so they gave them to me, and I'm not really a sentimental guy. I don't even believe in the concept of marriage in the first place at all. But I could tell my parents are a lot more sentimental, and they thought it might have meant something to them, and so they said maybe you could give that to her, and you could have one, and whatever. And I know my fucking gargantuan ogre hands, they would never fit anybody's ring. Anyway, even though my grandfather, he wasn't a small man by any means, but his wedding band could only fit the last digit of my pinky finger. I have huge fucking hands, right? And so I went into the room, and she's there or whatever on her phone, and she's doing her thing, and I try to present her with the ring, and I'm in a good mood, I'm smiling, whatever, and she says, keep it, I don't want it, like that, right? And I'm like, man, that's so rude. I don't think you understand how rude that is, right? And she's like, whatever, you just give me your bullshit. You just give me your bullshit. And she doesn't even look up from her phone. And I kind of said, like, real low, in a real low voice, so as to not, like, make a scene. I said, take it. Like, serious. Like, that's basically my way of saying, like, shut the fuck up and just fucking take it. And so she took it and just tosses it aside. She just tosses it onto the bed and doesn't even, like, look up. So I left the room, and she goes, no, before I left the room, sorry, she goes, take this paperwork to, like, fill out the form or whatever for this. We had to go to a consultation. I forgot to mention, I'm jumping all over the place. We had a consultation. So how it works is it's like 3-prong, right? You first go on one day, you go to get a marriage license. Then you go for a marriage consultation, and then you go for a marriage ceremony, and then you're married, right? So this was the second phase. We were going for this consultation, and there was a couple of pages that you had to fill out some information on. And she goes, after tossing this ring aside like a piece of fucking trash, like an old apple core, she goes, take this piece of paper and, like, fill it out. So I go, I didn't even, take her rage bait. Even at this point, I take the piece of paper down. And, it was very jargonous. It was full of a lot of isms and bullshit. So I asked my mother. I wasn't in the mood to really, like, sit there and slog through all of this. So I asked my mother, I said, can you sort of just, like, go through this for me and just tell me what I need to sign or whatever. So she's sitting there, and I'm over her shoulder, and my father's there. And we're all at the table, and she's going through this, and it's asking these questions, will you be exchanging any rings? I say no. Will you be exchanging any vows? I say no. And it gets to this one question on there where it says, will you be exchanging a kiss? Right? To, like, I don't know, they had some legalistic term for it. I don't think it was like consummate or whatever, but I think that's usually like sexual intercourse, but maybe they said consummate. But whatever, they asked, like, basically, will you be exchanging a kiss? And I said, no. And my mom stopped for a minute. She didn't just write it down. She said, well, come on, that's kind of, and my dad started chiming in too. Well, come on, you got to do that, buddy. And I'm telling you, I grabbed that fucking pen from my mother's hand, so assertively and aggressively that had she tried to resist it, I probably would have just snapped her wrist. I grabbed that fucker from her hand and fucking X'd that box. Like, I can't even fucking put to words. Like, I fucking X'd the shit out of that fucking box. And I handed her back the pen and I said, keep going. And they said, okay. And that was that. So we get into the car. My parents were driving us over there. I says, let's go. I'm ready. Let's go. And I asked them because it's so hard to find parking in the city. And when you do find it, it costs like $40 fucking dollars. I'm not even exaggerating, to park for 10 minutes, right? So we're driving along and I didn't say a word the entire trip. And at this point, my girlfriend is like seeing my demeanor, that like I'm really just fucking at the end of my rope. And she starts walking it back. She's, oh, you okay? You seems a little bit like serious, whatever, right? She know like I was fucking at the wit's end with this shit, right? And I felt like I was being driven to my funeral rather than to a wedding. I felt like I was being driven by my own parents. They never step in. Not that they could have stopped me, because I'm going to do what I'm going to do, but that they didn't try to stop me. It goes back to that fence sitting video I made last week where I'm like, ultimately, they don't have your back. My parents will never, ever, ever have my back if it means that there's even a chance that having my back could entail taking a side against anybody else that might resent them for it. And it's like my friend Sigma Trialectic said, he's spot on, and I'm glad I kind of went to him with this, but he said, there is no fence. There is no fence, and not doing that, in not taking a side, I mean, you've taken a side. There's no bystander perspective. There's no neutrality. Everything is participatory. And so we go in for this consultation. We go in and check in with the receptionist, and they make the phone call, Mr. and Mrs. are here to see you now for their consultation, whatever. And this woman comes right out and ushers us into this big boardroom, and we sit down and hand her over the forms, the brochure, whatever we filled out. And she glances through it. She goes, oh, this is an easy one. And she gets down there to that. She's like, oh, you're not exchanging vows, not exchanging rings. And she gets down to that question about the kiss. And she goes, oh, this means like that you guys won't be exchanging a kiss together or whatever, right? And she seemed like almost insinuating that we had misread it or misunderstood what it meant. And I didn't, without any explanation, I just simply said, yeah, that's correct. And she looked kind of bewildered. You could tell she didn't see this very often, like if ever. These people are getting married, right? You're getting married, right? You could tell, like how many fucking appointments does she go through in a fucking week, in a day even? A dozen, maybe? And I could tell this was something that she did not frequently encounter. And so she looked at my girlfriend, soon to be wife, and, was kind of like seeking with her eyes like a better explanation. Not that we owed her one, but my girlfriend said, yeah, we've known each other like 6 years. We, just kind of saying like we're very comfortable together. We don't need to have a kiss or whatever. We've kind of done that enough. Like, which was probably the best answer she could have really given. And she just basically said, congratulations, rung us up on the debit card. I tapped and, to the tune of a few $100s, and that's it. And we come home and I wasn't myself for the rest of the day. I just kind of kept to myself. And a few times, she tried to give me a hug later. I didn't reciprocate. For once, it was me giving the silent treatment. Still not to the extent that she does it to me over the most trifling of matters. But I fucking held the line, I didn't really just give in. I kind of silence treatmented her that day. And by the evening, I had kind of, had a long and thorough discussion with Sigma, and I kind of lightened up a little bit, and I began, just sort of talking to her again. And now we're back to being buddies again, and a lot of people ask, like, why are you doing this, right? Why the hell is this guy doing this? And I think if you're not in this position, you will never, ever understand. It's necessary for me to get married in order that I can travel, far outside of this country, which I plan to be doing very soon for a lengthy period of time. I just need a change of scenery. I really just need a change of scenery. And I don't feel like I have anything to lose at this point. A man who has nothing to lose has only to gain. Nowhere to go but up for me from here. And, a friend of mine asked me yesterday, he said, he's kind of talking about me just going through this gauntlet, voluntarily sticking my head into a wood chipper. He said, do you ever think you're going to look back and regret any of this? And I said, no. I didn't even hesitate to answer no, because I'm not that type of a guy. I have a sort of clearness of mind, even in the moments when I'm making mistakes. I always know. I'm always able to accurately anticipate the consequences of my actions beforehand. Things turn out bad for me quite often, but I was always, without exception, aware in advance that they would, and yet I acted in such a way that they did. But I don't think... I think that the concept of regret is closely bound up with the concept of ignorance, or being ill-informed of something, the resultant consequences of some action, and then regretting the action. When you already have the regret before you've already engaged in the activity, and then choose to engage in said activity anyways in spite of that, I don't think that the concept of regret breaks down at that point. And so I said, no. I know what I'm doing. I know what I volunteered for. I know what I've signed up for. Getting involved with this type of arrangement. I'm in the World Series of Poker, and I've got no chips to my name. trying to bluff my way into the game. And quite recently, I've come to the realization that I'm essentially the counterpart to another YouTuber. Whereas I've opted in and he's opted out. And I'm speaking of Dustin Clay. And as far as I'm aware, he and I are the only two on this platform, in this sphere, in this type of genre of content creation, who are doing anything like, autobiographical documentary of our lives in this sort of completely honest, transparent, and unfiltered way. It's a journal. And that's why I don't care to cater or curate my delivery, my style, my message, the subject matter, anything. I don't want to alter it for the listener, anything like that. It's mine. And I'm deeply grateful to everybody that has shared, hundreds and thousands of comments that I've received in the years of doing this, where you guys have felt comfortable enough with me to divulge very intimate and lengthy descriptions of intimate aspects of your own lives, which has helped me immensely to put my own situation into perspective. I cannot thank you guys enough, but at the end of the day, I'd be doing this if the videos received 0 views. This is my time capsule, my autobiography. This is my journal. These are my thoughts, my feelings. This is my life. And it's so hard for me to make this, because it's one thing to talk about yourself, but I'm talking about the closest people to me who, although I have a lot of, deep-seated resentment for, a lot of hatred, genuine, heartfelt hatred for at times, I do have a sort of ethical deliberation that goes on in myself when I post these, because I talk, so in detail about my brother, my wife, my parents, right? The only people in my life who themselves have, for the most part, gone to great lengths to basically keep their information off of the internet, keep themselves rather anonymously online, not put themselves out there. These are very private people. But at the same time, because of the way that I have been treated by them, I'm not necessarily sure they deserve that type of anonymity. But at the same time, I'm not any better. I'm very difficult. I'm very abusive verbally sometimes, and emotionally. I'm deceptive. I'm a liar. I'm adulterous. I'm everything in the book, but I'm me. I'm collective fucking dismal. What you see is what you get. The good, the bad, the smart, the dumb, the base, the cringe, all of it. It's on full display. And also too, with me having progeny and stuff, it does make the act of, going out and putting myself in situations that are high risk. They are, what's even the word? It's just, the words are kind of escaping me. Putting myself in these bizarre situations like I have countless times, in order not only to serve as a source material for content on this channel, but to feel alive, to feel like I'm not just room rotting. I'm not just passing the days, going to work, come home, go to work, come home. I'm doing these things in between, which normal people don't do. I'm putting myself out there and exposing myself to these types of social interactions that normal people are never exposed to. And as a result, I'm able to come up with insights that nobody else, save, like I said, for Dustin Clay, probably will come out with. And it's just a result of the compounding of so much lived experience. And the reason I, invoke his name in this video is because I do see him as the counterpart to my own journey. His journey is the flip side of mine, whereas he has been consistent, in that he's such a disagreeable prick, this fucking guy, that he doesn't want to lose the ability or deprive himself of the ability to just tell somebody that, when he feels they deserve it, fuck you. Whether that be an employer or whoever it is, right? A housemate, a roommate, whatever. And he's so committed to that he will sacrifice shelter, right? Which is like basically at the bottom of the Maslow's pyramid. Like, this is a roof over your head. He will not be told what to fucking do if he felt it unjust or he felt it nonsensical. And he's determined to die on that hill. Whereas I've done the opposite, and I said, I'm going to sit on my haunches and I'm going to bite my tongue as much as is possible. And I'm going to take my fucking lashings. I'm going to take my licks. I'm going to internalize the lashings. And hopefully, if I just, I'm losing rounds. It's late in the game. I haven't put up a single point in the whole quarter, but I'm still there, and hopefully something will happen where a couple unlikely strokes of luck will align and form a bit of a constellation, and I'll crack slip by hook or by crook, if I stay in the pocket, if I keep. And that's just as fanciful as the story that he's telling himself in order to cope with his the Vagabond Chronicles. But what else are we to do? Because if we give up this way of explaining our plight to ourselves in this justificatory way, we'll have nothing to ground us. It'll just be the rope on the other side of that loss of hope. And, I'm going to be taking a trip for some months. It'll be more difficult for me to access this platform if everything goes through and I'm able to take that trip, which I don't see why not. I don't know what the whole point of it is. It came out of left field very quickly, and I know when I get back, I'm not going to have any money for sure. And number two, I probably won't have a job because it's not that easy to just take months and months and months away from your job, especially when I hadn't even been there for a year. And it was so hard to find this job in the first place. And so my friend Sigma, he said, just looking out for my best interest, he said, don't discount the possibility that you may be coming back by yourself. And while I don't necessarily think that's very likely, I do understand that I am very naive. And as such, he's able to see and predict, certain backstabs that I'm just unable to, frankly. I have blinders on when it comes to things like that. And he said, well, even if that were the case, maybe you could take solace in the fact that you did, you kicked the can down the road for another generation, you put your genes out there, and hopefully, I know he'll inevitably listen to this, and hopefully he won't take any issue with me divulging a little bit about him, but, I remarked to his warning, I said, well, simply having offspring is not enough. You have to be there to nurture them, or else it's really a failed endeavor. And he said, well, not according to his dad, because his father, who abandoned him later on in life, it wasn't like a abandoned from birth type situation. In his situation, he was abandoned by him as I think, a late teenager or an adult. But he said at one point, his father, who was in and out of his life, he's toyed with the idea of actually being a father and not just a reproductive success. But all that was required for him was to simply switch the framework. And this is a bit of a meta concept. Like, this is it's a bit of a philosophical idea. Like, the way that we narrativize our actions, the story we tell ourselves about the decisions we make, changes the entire construal of them, how we justify them, etc. And so the actions that you take, what you do, how you behave, is just what it is. That element of it is fixed. That's immutable. The fact is, you walked out of your kid's life. But the way that you frame that, the way that you construe or you narrativize that, is going to determine, to a large extent, how easy it is for you to live with that. The kind of justifications that you give to yourself in order to explain that action or behavior. And so he said, for his father, all he had to do was switch the frame. Then suddenly it's okay. He could live with it again. For me, I'm choosing not to switch the frame. I'm choosing to remain in the status quo framing that I was sort of inculcated with from childhood, from early on. I could just totally invert my value system so as to make it okay, so as to be able to tell myself a different story about my plight and cope with it much easier. But I'm all in on this because basically, it's out of spite. It's out of spite. And after talking with him, I recognize that as being the case. So I'll give you an analogy. When I was young, I was told, like all of you, like everybody who listens to this channel, I was told that if you do X, Y, and Z and you follow the golden path, even if you're not a genius, even if you're not a brainiac, there will be a spot for you in society when you come of age. As long as you stay off drugs, you don't get a girl pregnant when you're 14, you don't, run away from home, you don't drop out of school, you stay with it, you stay with the program, you keep your stick on the ice. When you come of age, there will be some type of a, gainful employment position open to you, whether it's even just, being a roofer or being a drywaller. You'll mean something to society. And I did every fucking thing. Did I slip along the way? Yes. Did I stray from the path? Yes. But I always stuck by and did right. And they yoinked it away from me anyway. They yoinked it away. They said, you just do everything this way. And when you come of age, nobody ever told you that we live in a degrowth economy and we have depopulation demography. And they're deeming people useless eaters. And they're getting rid of these people. And they're shrinking the economy. And there's not enough seats on the bus for how many people are standing at the terminal. They never told us that. They were never honest and upfront about that. They lied. And they made fucking promises. They wrote checks that their ass couldn't cash. And they wanted you to just come of age and, okay, well, whatever, man. We lied, but them's the breaks. Now go watch the porn. Go play the video. Go work your 3-hour shift at the bowling alley or whatever, right? And be lucky that you have that at 35 years old. And I'm not going to change the framing. I've decided that I refuse to do that. And so when that bus tried driving away without me on it, I grabbed on to the fucking back bumper. And it's dragging me, and I'm fucking bouncing down the street and getting skinned alive. But I'm not going to let go. If you want to do that, I'm not going to stand there. You're not going to drive off and leave me standing there with my dick in my hand. I'm going to grab on. Even if the final result is the same, you're going to have to clean me off of the grill. That's the least I can do. You're going to do a 20-year rug pull on me, 25-year rug pull, and expect me to just kick off, fuck off. You're going to have to clean me off the grill. It's like David Koresh said. I'm the kind of guy that'll go stand out in front of a tank. And you could run over me if you want, but I'll be biting one of the tracks. So, just wish me the best of luck, guys. Whatever I do upload on this channel, for the foreseeable future, will probably be, there's a couple of audio books that I want to record and upload. They'll probably be of no interest to the bulk of the viewers on this channel. I want to make a couple of videos regarding topics of a purely philosophical nature that, again, will probably be of very little interest to the majority of listeners on this channel. There's a number of escapades, that I've had that I have just not made content about. There's probably at least, 4 to 6 things that I've done, that I've gone out and done that probably would make for very good content, and maybe in the future I'll get around to it. There's no expiry date on these experiences. They will all inevitably have to be brought to light. But I think for now, I really need to let the dust settle on this channel. And I hope this doesn't get a lot of views. I really don't. I don't want to grow. I don't want exposure. I don't want a big audience. I don't want popularity. I'm not Raymond. I'm not these guys. I don't want it. This is it's a diary of my life. That's all it is, and that's what you see is what you get. Is he black-pilled? Is he this? Is he that? I'm not concerned with it. I'm not concerned with how you want to categorize what it is that I do here. But thanks again for hanging out and being here. And in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.